Now you can get fast, reliable internet on the Xfinity 10G network and get storm-ready Wi-Fi when you upgrade, so you can stay connected for up to 4 hours, even when the power goes out. Only from Xfinity. Go to Xfinity.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today. Restrictions apply. Storm-ready Wi-Fi limited to customers within range of 4G LTE cellular signal. Speeds reduced to 30/7 megabits per second. Actual speeds vary. For more details, visit Xfinity.com/stormready.
Electric vehicles are here to stay. And if you're looking for an electric vehicle, Andy Moore Ford is your EV headquarters. More selection. Get to Andy Moore Ford to shop the Mach-E, the E-Transit, the F-150 Lightning in stock, and more arriving daily. Save more at the pump when you switch to an Andy Moore Ford EV. Say hello to more rebates with federal and state incentives. You could save more. How's over $7,500 sound to you? But the benefits don't end there. Purchasing an EV with Andy Moore means you can take advantage of excellent services like more to your door, more peace of mind with over a decade of experience in selling and servicing electric vehicles. Andy Moore Ford's EV experts are here to answer all of your questions from sales to service, parts to maintenance. Check out Andy Moore Ford. Find them in Plainfield at 2713 East Main Street, 2713 East Main Street. Andy Moore Ford. Andy Moore, M-O-H-R. AndyMooreFord.com. That's AndyMooreFord.com.
Hey, it's JMV here with Lance Smith, owner of LD Smith Plumbing. And Lance, I keep running out of hot water in my house. What's going on?
Well, if you're running out of hot water too quick, either there's a problem with your existing water heater or it's undersized. A great solution for that is a tankless water heater. You could take a 24-hour shower, never run out of hot water. And right now we got a great promotion going, $300 off any tankless water heater.
That's a great deal, and I need an hour-long shower. That's the best. Lance and his local team at LD Smith Plumbing, ldsmithplumbing.com.
Denny Smith for Sundown Gardens and Miss M's Home and Garden. The discounts for the big fall sale jumped to 30 to 40% off nursery stock plus 20% off all fall annuals, pumpkins, and mums. Hurry in now while supplies last in the greenhouse. Container trees and shrubs can still be planted, and you save big money buying now. Sundown Gardens at 186th Street and Spring Mill Road in Westfield, sundown.gardens.com. Miss M's Home and Garden on State Road 135 south of Whiteland Road, missmshomeandgarden.com.
After a car wreck, it can feel like you're living in a horror show.
Don't let the insurance company make you feel like you're living in a bad, scary movie. I'm attorney Daryl Isaacs. Just click to get help quick at WeWin.com.
Happy Halloween from the Hammer.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Need a new furnace or air conditioner? Get the best from B&W Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Drains.
Go to B+W.com. B&W, your trusted local independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
The Indianapolis Public Library. More than just books. Visit your local branch today.
Second to none on the Second Amendment. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. We hope you're enjoying the show so far. And by the way, I mentioned at the top of the show, we're actually not taking calls tonight. Due to the miracles of modern technology, we have actually pre-recorded the show. And as I mentioned here a few minutes ago, I'm acting as the Master of Ceremonies for the Blazer 88 Foundation. It's having its annual formal gala out in Greenfield at Adagio's Banquet Hall. Looking forward to that. But in the meantime, we've still recorded, I think, a show you'll enjoy, and we appreciate you joining us. I was talking about before the break, you know, some of these long-standing debates, and this is what happened. I posted about this conference, or symposium, whatever you want to call it, discussion. And these people are going to go in and debate whether or not the Supreme Court's right or wrong, essentially, on recent rulings regarding the scope and the meaning of the Second Amendment. And what are they talking about there? Well, they're talking about the Heller decision, primarily, from 2008. And Heller resolved an awful lot of questions and frankly ended, or should have, it didn't end, it should have ended a lot of the debates about exactly that, the meaning of the Second Amendment. And what were some of these longstanding issues? I mean, going back generations. I mean, arguably a couple hundred years. There's been a debate about the meaning of the Second Amendment, and in particular, about the meaning of what a lot of us, in fact, the courts call the prefatory clause, the beginning of the Second Amendment that starts off a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. And And a lot of people have looked at that and historically said, well, there you go. It's talking about a militia, and therefore only when you're in an organized government-controlled militia like the National Guard does the Second Amendment confer any rights on you. And that argument has existed among, again, law professors, a lot of judges, anti-Second Amendment advocates, gun control proponents. That argument's been out there for a damn long time. And a lot of them, in fact, you'll see posts where it was well settled for hundreds of years that the Second Amendment only applied to you if you were in a militia. That's a government-sponsored military unit, again, like today the National Guard, but where you're employed by the state and you're controlled, you're regulated by the state. And you still see that. When people go out, and I'll guarantee you this came up, again, I wasn't there, and I wasn't invited, and I sure as hell wasn't invited to speak. But at this symposium last night, I'll guarantee you, people on there going, oh, yeah, well, it's so misguided. Clearly what the founders meant was, because it starts off talking about a militia, the Second Amendment only helps you in any way, only confers any particular right on you if you're a member of a militia. Well, first of all, let's back up. The Supreme Court in the Heller decision, 2008, resolved that issue. So whether you like it or don't, whether you agree with it or you don't, doesn't really matter because it's the law of the land. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But let's even take a step back from that, and because it irks the hell out of me when I hear people say the Second Amendment confers a right, or it gives us a right, or it creates a right to keep and bear arms. Is that what it did? Absolutely not. And again, the Second Amendment and this particular point has been addressed by the courts and the Supreme Court in particular. And we don't have to debate this. This is over. My right to defend myself, my family, my home, and my country is conferred by me by God. The government doesn't give me that right. And the Second Amendment sure as hell doesn't give me that right. I didn't need the Second Amendment to have a right to defend myself. And implicit within the right to defend myself is the right to be armed so as to do so. And there's no question about that. There's not even a legitimate debate about that. And the Supreme Court has confirmed it. So don't ever tell me what the Second Amendment gave me. There was a huge debate between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists during the founding of whether we even needed a Bill of Rights. And the Federalists were saying, we don't need a Bill of Rights. We don't need to enumerate what rights need to be protected, or specifically that need to be protected in the Constitution. Because the Constitution, by design, is so limited as to the powers it gives the federal government. If we haven't given the federal government a particular enumerated power, then it doesn't have it. And if it doesn't have it, it can't exercise that power so as to infringe our rights. So if we haven't given the government the right to regulate free speech, it doesn't have the right to infringe your natural right to free speech. Period. End of story. And the Anti-Federalists said, well, you may be right, but we don't trust the bastards that are ever going to come into the government and become the people that have to make decisions on how to govern us. Why? Because we don't trust people. We don't trust human nature. And that's why we need a Bill of Rights. Only then was there an agreement to, let's ratify the current Constitution, then come back and agree on a Bill of Rights. And I'll tell you what, we're down here at the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a break. We'll come back and we'll continue this discussion here on the Gun Guy Show tonight on 93 WIBC.
93 WIBC.
Delphi murder suspect Richard Allen needs a new legal team.
Previous legal team was accused of leaking evidence.
Allen will need a public defender.
Hear the news.
President Biden addressing us from the White House,
describing Hamas as pure, unadulterated evil.
Another update is just minutes away.
Temperatures will bounce between the 40s and the 70s.
The warmer air trying to win out, but the colder air will eventually win in the end. A warm period later next week.
93 WIBC and WIBC.com.
Indianapolis. With Mayor Joe Hogsett, we've made real progress. Billions in new construction, unemployment at a historic low, 700 new police, $1.2 billion in new infrastructure, hundreds of new streetlights, and thousands of college scholarships. Now Joe Hogsett is fighting the state abortion ban and to get guns off the street. But Joe knows the work isn't done. It's why he's hiring even more police, expanding community policing, and investing in programs that help keep kids out of trouble. And Jefferson Shreve, he supports banning abortion. And after getting an A rating from the NRA, Jefferson Shreve has been against any new gun laws. Jefferson Shreve is bringing Trump-style politics to Indianapolis and trashing our city. Re-elect Mayor Joe Hogsett. Steady leadership in times of change.
Paid for by Hogsett for Indianapolis.
You expect your home to protect everything you love, but you don't expect the ways water is breaking down your crawl space and damaging your home. Musty smells, sagging floors, mold are just a few signs your crawl space is compromised. But there's one way to get answers to all your concerns. A free home inspection from Indiana Foundation Service. We put water back in its place. Get your free inspection at indianafoundation.com.
Drought, war, and rising food prices have devastated families in poverty. $50 provides a food kit to feed a family for a month. Just text the word radio to 97646.
To protect his family from disaster, Steve used his camera phone. Done. By taking pictures of his important documents, Steve can always have them stored online. Learn more simple disaster prep tips at ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Indy Humane. Find your new best friend today. Visit indyhumane.org.
This hour on 93 WIBC, powered by B&W Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, your American Standard air dealer.
Fox News, I'm Ann Carrick. Jim Jordan is out after losing a third vote for Speaker of the House.
Jordan lost that third vote, and he hemorrhaged even more support, with even more Republicans voting against him this time than the first two votes. So House Republicans huddled behind closed doors to try and figure out a path forward, and after an anonymous vote, they decided to drop Jordan's nomination.
Fox's Bill Malugin. Without a speaker, there will be no aid packages and no stopping a government shutdown. As fighting continues between Israel and Hamas, GOP presidential candidates are weighing in.
I think a ground invasion into Gaza at this juncture without a very clear objective is likely to be a disaster, and I worry about the cascade that opens up.
Vivek Ramaswamy on Fox News at Night. 2 American hostages were released Friday. The U.S. State Department believes there are 10 more. America's listening to Fox News.
Guy Relford for Tactical Firearms Training. As you often hear me say, our most popular class is our Essentials of Indiana Gun Law class, and our next one is coming up Saturday, November 4th, just in a couple of weeks. This is 4.5 hours of the most important legal information you need as an Indiana gun owner, including a detailed discussion of the justified and lawful use of force in self-defense, where you can't carry a gun, how you can avoid common prosecutions like intimidation with a deadly weapon or criminal recklessness with a deadly weapon, both felonies. That and a whole bunch more. 4.5, sometimes 5 hours of the most important information you need as an Indiana gun owner. It's $50 for an individual, $95 for couples. You can sign up right online at tactical-firearms.com. Just click on upcoming courses at tactical-firearms.com.
Don't you love fall in Indy, but you hate the paint? Do what your neighbor Mark did. He called Rhino Shield.
It's a 2-story home built in 1992. Around 2001, looking at needing to paint, I heard a radio ad, with Rhino Shield, you won't have to paint again for another 25 years.
Rhino Shield's a ceramic coating, better than paint.
They're very professional. We had everything done. Everything that would typically be painted on a house was done, and it was very fast.
Here's a never-before offer, Indy. Act now before October 31st and get 25% off the 25-year guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield.
It was done in 2001. From what I've seen on our home, they can easily offer a 25-year guarantee and not worry about it.
Remember, Indy, this is a limited-time offer, so act by Halloween to get 25% off the 25-year guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield. Here's owner Shane Smith.
This offer is limited, so call me at 888-RHINO-41. That's 888-RHINO-41.
Go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
I'm Dwight Freeney, and my friend Eli is alive today thanks to someone who said yes to organ donation. When Eli was just 12 years old, he received a liver transplant that saved his life because someone just like you said yes to being an organ donor. His story and many others like his are why I have teamed up with Indiana Donor Network and Donate Life Indiana to help end the wait for life-saving organs. You can help. Say yes to being an organ donor next time you are at the BMV.
PA Jewelers in Brownsburg is your place for fine jewelry, custom pieces, one-of-a-kind pieces, vintage pieces, and also your place to sell jewelry. 3754 South Green Street in Brownsburg, PA Jewelers inside Premier Arms. You have old jewelry from grandma or jewelry you don't wear anymore? Come sell it for top dollar at PA Jewelers. I've sold jewelry there. My wife has. You're going to love the prices. PA Jewelers inside Premier Arms, 3754 South Green Street in Brownsburg, premierarms.com.
The show about gun rights, gun safety, and responsible gun ownership. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back to The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. We're glad you're with us. So before the break there at the bottom of the hour, we were talking about something that's just very basic to the Constitution in general and the Bill of Rights in particular. And people really need to understand this, which is the Bill of Rights doesn't give you any rights. It talks about rights you already have that are bestowed on you by the Creator and with which we are endowed by our Creator, right? I mean, that's language right out of the Declaration of Independence. And these are the same folks. People should never forget about the links and the important interpretations of the Constitution that you can get from checking out the rest of the founding documents. And primarily here, I'm talking about the Declaration of Independence and the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers are brilliant. The Federalist Papers are essentially a lot of the same founders, talking about Hamilton and Madison and John Jay primarily. And even within that group, mainly Hamilton and Madison. But what they're doing is they're making a sales pitch to the country on why this newly adopted as far as the Continental Congress went, and then our first Congress, what would become our first Congress, why it ought to be ratified at the state level. So really it's a sales pitch. But in making the sales pitch, they did a lot of explanation as to why the founders put together the form of government that they did. And again, it's the most beautiful experiment in freedom and democracy the world's ever seen. It's the longest enduring democracy in the world, in the history of the world. And people say, oh, well, wait a minute, we're still pretty young. What, 250 years less. Well, yeah, that's because democracies a lot of times are so poorly designed that they disintegrate. Not ours. It's strong as it's stronger than any democracy in the history of the universe. And the system of government they put together was brilliant, but a lot of the foundation for it, the motivation for it, and the thinking behind it, you can get not just from the Constitution, but from the other founding documents. And when the Declaration of Independence starts talking about, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Endowed by their Creator. They're not saying, gosh, we need government to give people some rights here, otherwise they have no rights. I got into this with a U.S. congressman from Indiana who said, oh, you don't have any rights unless the government gives it to you. Bull. He was basically saying, well, the government decides you don't have a right, then you don't have that right. No, I still have the right. The government's just decided to infringe it. And that's why the rest of the Declaration of Independence becomes really important. Because I never lost the right in terms of whether or not I possessed it. Was the government successfully infringing it for some amount of time? Yes. Then what happens after that is the great American experiment. And that's addressed also right there in the Declaration of Independence. When any form of government becomes destructive of these ends meaning securing the natural rights possessed by men. And I say men, obviously I mean men and women. Because right after it talks about unalienable rights, that among these being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it says that to secure these ends, that is the protection of those rights. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. You know, when I'm told, well, you don't have any rights unless the government gives to you. No. You are governing with my consent and the consent of the rest of the citizens of this country. And if you no longer have that consent, you may no longer govern. But they're the government. They have all the power. Well, now we're going to start getting into the reason for the Second Amendment. Because it goes on from there, talking about the consent of the governed. Then it says, whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends. And again, what ends are we talking about? That is securing the unalienable rights of citizens. When any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute such new government. And to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall deem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. That's effect, as in put into place. So it says right there, you government, you govern with my consent. And where you lose my consent, you may no longer govern. And if you disagree with that, and for instance, if I vote you out and you simply say, no, I'm not leaving, or refuse to otherwise follow the principles laid out in the form of government that we have, you have become destructive of the ends of preserving my natural rights, and it is the people's right, not just ability, but right, to alter or abolish that form of government. So I have natural rights, and the government's role is to actually secure and protect those rights. That's what the founders believed. And that's why the Constitution does a couple of things. It lays out our structure of government, and it gives the federal government very limited powers. And that's where the debate that I mentioned a little bit earlier comes into play, because the Federalists were saying, if we haven't given the federal government a particular enumerated power, it doesn't have that power, so there's no reason to lay out a Bill of Rights. And the Anti-Federalists were much bigger cynics. They were much more suspicious of human nature and human behavior and said, no, we need to lay out some certain protections. Certain protections are so important that we need to lay them out and make it clear and implicit that they need to be protected. And that wasn't to create those rights or confer those rights. That's not what we're talking about. It was to protect them from infringement and make it abundantly clear. Was it redundant because we didn't give the government the power to infringe those rights to begin with? Sure. But how was the last 240-some years played out in terms of whether or not they were right in being cynical and whether or not we need that protection? Because a whole bunch of people in our current government are telling you that you don't actually have the rights that are even laid out and secured and protected in the Bill of Rights. And the Second Amendment is first on that list. So if ever there were a wise group of people in terms of their predictions and their cynicism and a bit of negativism as to human nature and the nature of government and the nature of human beings who are invested with power, the Anti-Federalists go to the top of the list. They win that competition because they've been dead on. We've got all these people in the government telling you that you don't actually have the rights that are spelled out in the Bill of Rights. If you care at all about the Second Amendment, that could not be more true as to that. So I'm talking about the context of the creation of the Second Amendment and what it really means. So we've, I believe, rather easily rebutted this idea that the Second Amendment confers or gives or creates some right. No, it's a natural right. It's simply protected from infringement in a perhaps a redundant way, but obviously a necessary way, given how history has played out. But what is the meaning and scope of the Second Amendment? That's the next debate. And that's what we'll get into here after we take this break. Right now, we're taking a break. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Tony Katz.
I alphabetized my soundboard. Well, I'm sorry, you didn't hear that. F?
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
I have to go to S for Sopranos. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think you got it.
It's so clean now. It's fantastic. Yeah, we have clearly run out of things to talk about. There's nothing else going on in the world.
It's a great world, everything's so.
This show is stupid.
Tony Katz, mornings 6 to 9 on 93 WIBC and WIBC.com.
If you can plan barbecues and weddings, you can plan to protect yourself from a natural disaster. Sign up for local alerts, prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
You already know our police force is now over 300 officers short, and that 800 have left the force under Joe Hogsett. But, of course, public safety is about more than police. So, did you know that Hogsett promised funding and programs to address root causes of crime? The problem is, he didn't deliver, and promises alone don't save lives. The facts are the facts. Too many Hoosiers have become statistics because Joe Hogsett can't follow through.
I'm Jefferson Shreve. Crime is about more than just police. We need to invest in mental health in ways we never have before and really help those in need. I'll double city funding to do it. We need more cops, but also better training, tools, and pay. Public safety isn't simple, but it is the keystone to turning things around. I'm not running against Joe Hogsett because he's a Democrat. I'm running because he's failed our hometown.
Paid for by Shreve for Mayor.
This is the lunch rush at your local deli. Orders are flying in. Online, on the phone, and in person.
Order for Nick.
So is it possible that fast internet could help your business outrun the rush? It is with Comcast Business. Up-leveling your speed with gig speed Wi-Fi, powering all your devices, and fast downloads and uploads, powered by the next generation 10G network. With Comcast Business, next level speed isn't just possible, it's happening. Comcast Business, powering possibilities.
Get started with fast speeds and advanced security for $49 a month for 12 months with a 1-year contract. Plus, ask how to get a $600 prepaid card with a qualifying gig bundle. Call or go online to learn more. Ends 11/12/2023. Restrictions apply. Requires paperless billing and autopay. New 100 megabits per second internet and security edge customers only. Equipment, taxes, and other fees extra. After promo, regular rates apply. Gig Wi-Fi requires gig speed and compatible router.
Your rights, your responsibilities, your guns. This is the Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back to the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. We're glad you're with us. And I started off top of the show talking about this symposium on, is the Supreme Court right or wrong in doing what it's doing? And by the way, if you heard that question, or as I read it about this discussion that apparently went on at IU last night, I mean, my first reaction, and perhaps yours as well, was, well, who cares what these opinions are? There's a bunch of people who get together and talk about whether the Supreme Court's right or the Supreme Court's wrong. The Supreme Court makes the decision it makes. And once the Supreme Court makes its decision, it's the law of the land. And you can like it or not. You can agree with it or not. And that means exactly nothing. It was hard to make that point without cussing right there, by the way. I really got to tell you. I had about 4 different words I can't say on the radio pop into my head. We'll just go with nothing. It means exactly nothing because they're the Supreme Court. So the fact that a bunch of academics or gun control proponents, I'm sure is the way it played out, got together in Bloomington at IU and talked about whether the Supreme Court's right or wrong is okay. All, I'm sure for them, very interesting, but it means nothing. They can disagree. They can call the Supreme Court all the names they want. But when you get into the substance about the discussions they went into and whether the Supreme Court, quote unquote, right or wrong, well, what really are they talking about? Well, again, is this debate that I mentioned briefly a bit earlier about whether the prefatory clause, and I still see this all the time on social media. Somebody will be talking about, being a Second Amendment supporter, and somebody will go, oh, yeah, what militia are you in? And if you're not in a militia, today meaning the National Guard, you have no right protected or conferred, you want to go that direction, by the Second Amendment. Okay, I still see that argument. Then you also see this argument over the term well-regulated. And I say, well, yeah, okay, if you're in a militia and you are well regulated, meaning regulated by the government with sufficient laws to keep people safe, then you have some right protected or conferred by the Second Amendment. And this argument's been going on forever. It went on for a damn long time in the courts. But it was resolved in 2008 by U.S. versus Heller. And what was U.S. versus Heller? What was it all about? There was a law in the District of Columbia that essentially eradicated the ownership of handguns. And people come in and they want to debate that and say, oh, no, it didn't eliminate handguns. There was just a license requirement. Well, yeah, you had to even have a handgun in your home, you had to get a license from the government, from the District of Columbia, even to have one in your home. And guess what? Several years before this decision, they just quit issuing licenses for handgun completely. So it was a de facto ban on the possession of handguns because you couldn't own one without a license and you couldn't get a license. Aren't they cute? In their scheme to infringe your Second Amendment rights. But then separately, there was a law that said if you had any other firearm in your home, it had to be unloaded and locked up or completely disassembled. Meaning it was completely useless to you as a means of self-defense. So look at there. You know, what have they now done to your Second Amendment rights? But this ends up going up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled in several different ways and very, very important ways. And they ended a lot of these debates. And now when I see these debates pop out on social media, and again, they popped out in the comments about this IU conference that went on last night. Because people were going on, these Second Amendment supporters were on there. And again, the same old crap you always see. People being adversarial to our Second Amendment rights saying, well, what militia are you in? Well, people always forget about the regulated part. All we're talking about is regulating your right. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why we need common sense gun control regulations, and it's right there in the Second Amendment. Well, we don't have to debate that anymore. And really, as Second Amendment advocates or proponents or just people who exercise or respect your own gun rights and those of others, we need to take a lesson here. We just need to quit debating the same old crap because it's law of the land. It's been resolved. The Supreme Court has ruled. Now, someday, would some different court come along and rule in a different way? Well, sure, perhaps, I suppose. You never know. Democrats just completely take control and they stack the court, or a bunch of the justices who voted in favor of Heller, or more recently the Bruin case, which I'll get into here in a minute, they die off or they retire and they get replaced by people who have a much more limited view of your constitutional freedoms, including under the Second Amendment, then yeah, this could change. But today, and for the foreseeable future, I fully believe for my lifetime, but I'm an old guy, we don't have to debate this anymore. It's over. It's done. And that's what I always say. I'll say, I don't know why you guys are, I always use the word regurgitate. I don't know why you guys are regurgitating these some old tired arguments that have been squarely rejected by the Supreme Court. I don't have to rebut your argument about the meaning of the term well-regulated or the meaning of the inclusion of well-regulated militia within the prefatory clause of the Second Amendment because the Supreme Court has ruled. It's over. It's done. So now if you just want to whine that the Supreme Court was wrong, that's great, but direct that at the Supreme Court. I don't have to address it. It's not on my list of concerns. And that's exactly what I say. A lot of times I'll just post the link to Heller v. DC. It's a long decision. You're going to have a little patience and read through it, but you can figure all this out. What does well-regulated mean? Does it mean regulated by the government? Does it mean regulated by laws? Statutes, regulations? No. It means nothing more than properly trained and equipped. Like a well-regulated clock keeps proper time. And it's a 2-sentence section of the opinion. It just goes, no. It means nothing more than it's trained and equipped to do its job. Period, end of story. And it cites historical examples as to how we know that's how the founders used the term well-regulated. So that debate's over. Somebody says, oh, this means we need more regulations. No, it doesn't. I win, you lose. Sorry. But then what about this idea of a militia? Well, if you're not in an organized militia, the Second Amendment does nothing for you. Supreme Court, this is where they perhaps spent a bulk of its decision on any given issue. It goes into a lot of different issues because it also goes into scope of the right and how and what arms we're talking about when we talk about the right to keep and bear arms. But they spent a lot of time debunking this idea that if you're not in the military, you have no protection under the Second Amendment. And they made it very clear that the way the founders envisioned this country functioning was that we needed a people's militia comprised of the whole of the body. It was really all able-bodied men. If you start digging through some additional documents, they start talking about men between 18 and 45. Today, it would be branched out well beyond men. It would be men and women, able-bodied, of a certain age, who could be called upon to defend this country. And yes, it was necessary to the security of a free state to have that militia available to us to defend the security and the freedom of this state. And that don't mean the individual states, like the then 13 states or today the 50 states. The state as in the entire politic, the entire country. And to do so, those folks had to be armed. But that's because they had arms in their home anyway for self-defense, for hunting, and as, if push came to shove, as a means of resisting a tyrannical government. But the idea was the whole of the body of the people could be called up with their arms that they already had at home to defend the security and the freedom of this country.
Broadcasting from the Peterman Brothers Heating, Plumbing, and Electrical Studios, this is Indy's Mobile News, 93 WIBC, WIBC HD1 Indianapolis. The news starts now.
Promises aid to Gaza. I'm Ann Carrick, Fox News. As war rages on, aid begins to arrive in southern Gaza. Fox's Peter Ducey.
President Biden gave credence to theories that Hamas attacked in response to talks that Israel was having to improve relations with Saudi Arabia. President Biden said at a fundraiser in Northwest D.C., I think one of the reasons why they acted like they did, why the folks Hamas moved on Israel as they have, is they knew I was about to sit down with the Saudis, who are not I wouldn't call them the greatest democracy in the world. His team is trying to get aid to Gaza, but they're saying that they are going to stop if it is intercepted by Hamas.
Billions of dollars in aid for both Israel and Ukraine pledged by the White House. A sliver of hope as 2 Americans are released from Gaza by Hamas. Fox's Mike Tobin is in southern Israel.
After nearly 2 weeks in Hamas captivity, Judith and Natalie Renan are now free from Evanston, Illinois. They're free from the Gaza Strip. Rapid-fire negotiations yesterday that sprung them free. The two were visiting relatives near the Gaza Strip when Hamas executed the massacre of October 7th, and they were taken hostage. Last night, with all the developments, her family finally learned that the mother and daughter duo had been moved to a base in central Israel.
The number of people being held hostage in Gaza now listed as 210 by Israeli military. A fallen Israeli soldier is identified as 22-year-old Staff Sergeant Omer Balva, who was born to Israeli parents and grew up in Rockville, Maryland. IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, announcing the Israeli reserve soldier with dual American citizenship is among those killed Thursday by an anti-tank missile fired from Lebanon. Balva was a commander in the 9203 Battalion of the Alexandroni Brigade. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, the Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Maria Bartiromo.
I'm Brian Kilmeade, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. from the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio is
93 WIBC Mobile News. On the level, on the go.
Looking into how the fire started. I'm Sasha Nixon. Here's what's trending this hour. The Indianapolis Fire Department says 3 people were hurt in a house fire early Saturday morning. Firefighters were called to a home on North Oakland Avenue a few minutes before 4:15 a.m. Indy's Emergency Medical Services took 2 men and 1 woman to Eskenazi. The woman and 1 man were in serious condition, and the other man had a slight injury. At this time, firefighters think the blaze might have started when a man was trying to cook in his upstairs bedroom and caught a blanket on fire. They say there were no working smoke alarms in the home. A man from Indianapolis will spend nearly a decade in federal prison for trying to rob a PetSmart, Harrison Silcox reports.
James Bennett, who police say had a history of robbery, showed up to an Eastside PetSmart November 4th last year. Officers say he pointed a gun at the cashier's head and hit her as he demanded cash from the register. It was all caught on video. Police say Bennett was convicted of 5 separate robberies before and also had another conviction for having sex with a minor. He was sentenced in 2007, and he tried robbing that PetSmart 5 months after he was released. Bennett will go back behind bars for another 9 years. Harrison Silcox, 93 WIBC Mobile News.
The Park County Covered Bridge Festival will be coming to an end Sunday. The festival is spread across 10 communities, each of which features unique vendors, treats, and activities. Learn more at coveredbridges.com. On the level, on the go, and on WIBC.com. Now here's the forecast from the American Standard Heating Weather Center.
Tonight, partly cloudy, staying breezy, wind gusts up to 25 miles an hour. Our low temperatures in the mid-40s. Sunday, mostly sunny skies. Our high temperatures in the upper 50s. On Wish TV, Storm Track 8 meteorologist Ryan Morse for 93 WIBC.
As a caregiver, managing your loved one's health can at times be overwhelming. This is Tina McIntosh, president of Joyce House and co-host of the Caregiver Crossing radio program. In a moment, I'll share 3 tips to help you manage your loved one's medical care effectively.
At Cardon Senior Living Communities, you'll find our teams share a commitment to enhancing the lifestyle and well-being of the people we serve every day at every stage of life.
Tip number 1, keep a list of all medications, dosages, and schedules to ensure your loved one is taking their medication correctly. Second, attend doctor's appointments with your loved one when you're able. And finally, stay organized by keeping forms, notes, and other important documents in one secure place. More tips like this are available anytime at caregivercrossingradio.org. With new weekly content created by Joyce House and distributed in partnership with Network Indiana, we're an on-air and online support group for Hoosier family caregivers. Hear conversations with experts, access a library of online education, and more at caregivercrossingradio.org.
Miss M's Home and Gardens discounts for the big fall sale jump to 30 to 40% off nursery stock, plus 20% off all fall annuals, pumpkins, and mums. State Road 135 in Bargersville.
Find the path to recovery that works for you. Learn more at cdc.gov/stopoverdose.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the Second Amendment, and this is the Gun Guy.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, bang, bang.
With Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back for hour number 2 of the Gun Guy Show here on 93 WIBC. And we're getting a little historical, getting a little constitutional in the discussion here this evening. And again, I was sort of motivated to do this by a lot of the debates, and it wasn't just in the context of this IU symposium that apparently went on last night. And I really am going to go out and try to find this thing. I kind of forgot the date. I was just looking at the link here at the top of the show and realized it actually went on last night. I, of course, was not invited to speak or otherwise, which is about as shocking as the sun coming up this morning. But, I want to just put an end to some of these debates in terms of we don't need those of us who respect and or exercise Second Amendment rights, we don't need to involve ourselves in these debates. We can shut them off. They're resolved. They're over. No, I don't need to be in a militia. In the 1791 sense, that's the year the Second Amendment was ratified, I am in the militia because I'm the whole of the body of the people. I don't know, there's an argument I'm too old. I'm well beyond 45. But the idea is the whole of the body of the people were armed at home. And they weren't just armed so that they could be called up to participate in the militia, to defend the security and the freedom of this great country. They were armed at home because they wanted to be able to defend their homes and their families. That was an integral part. Supreme Court has ruled on this. Self-defense is a part of the Second Amendment. You hear this current president say, you don't need an AR-15 to hunt. Second Amendment's not about hunting, Mr. President. It certainly, the Second Amendment envisioned, and to some fraction, to some component of the motivation for it, realized people needed arms to put food on the table. But it's certainly not limited to that. And self-defense is the central component of the motivation for the founders, including the Second Amendment and the Constitution. That is also included right there in the Heller decision. And anybody wants to try to limit you to say you don't need this, that, or the other firearm for hunting, that is not even worthy of a response. Second Amendment isn't about hunting. It's much more about self-defense and defending yourself from a tyrannical government than it is about hunting. The famous midnight ride of Paul Revere. He's talking about the colonists need to grab their arms and be prepared to begin the defense of this fledgling infant country. Because the British were coming. The regulars were out is much more likely a thing for him to have been saying because everybody was British back then. But the redcoats were out. The regular army was out. But when he rode through the countryside and he was warning the citizens essentially to arm themselves and make ready. He's calling upon the Minutemen, right? Because they could be ready in a minute to participate in their local, militia to stand up against tyranny. But in riding through the countryside, he did not ride through saying the deer are coming, the deer are coming. It's not what we're talking about here. Is it implicit? Is it included? Sure. And the Heller decision, looking at the whole historical context and doing a very deep dive into the founding and the documents we have surrounding it, concluded that's part of it, but it's not the principal motivation. It's not what we're talking about here. And that's why they wanted the people to be armed, the whole of the body of the people, including you and me. So yeah, in the 1791 sense, I am in the militia. I don't need to put on camo and run around in the woods with a group of other guys. If you do that and you train that way, God bless you. Good for you. But I can be called upon in the sense of the meaning of the Second Amendment to defend the security of a free state. 2 words, security of a free state. Do we want the militia, the people, the whole, the body of the people to be able to stand up right next to a standing army and defend this country from foreign invaders like they did against the British, not only in the War for Independence, but in 1812? Sure we did. That's where the security of a free state comes from. But the word free is in there for a reason, which is to be able to stand up to a tyrannical government. And this is the other debate. People will pipe up all the time. And I just saw this one. In fact, I responded to this one. Somebody said, anybody would have to be an idiot to believe that the Second Amendment means or intended for people to be able to stand up to the government Because here you are putting it into a document that creates a government. You wouldn't be creating a government through the drafting and the ratification of the Constitution, and in the same document put it in a means to destroy that same government. It's absurd, was the post I saw, to believe that you would include a means of opposing the government in a document that creates that same government. And, you know, it just maybe on a visceral reaction, on a gut level reaction, you may listen to that and go, well hold on, that makes some sense. Not until you get into the rest of the founding documents. Because go back to the discussion I put in the Declaration of Independence. The discussion I had on the language of the Declaration of Independence. And these are the same folks. Now, Jefferson was a primary author of the Declaration of Independence. Madison was the primary author of the Second Amendment. But these folks worked hand in hand. They're all there. They're all participating, whether the Continental Congress or otherwise. And we're of like mind on these issues. And it's interesting because, yes, why would they secure the right to bear arms in the Second Amendment in the same document that creating a government? Goes right back to the language I mentioned earlier in the Declaration of Independence. To secure these ends, that is, protecting unalienable rights, among these being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these ends, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. Now, interesting, they use the term right of the people. So if my government that I've helped establish, again, governments are established among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. So I have consented to a particular form of government, just exactly as would happen if our Constitution were to be ratified by the states, which it was. So now I've created a form of government, or in the terms of the Declaration, instituted a form of government. Great. And the Constitution that's out there to be ratified gets ratified. So, yes, it's created a form of government. People say, oh, well, it would never put something in there that would allow people to oppose that same government when you're creating a government. Really? What's the next line? Or what is that line I just mentioned, I should say, of the Declaration of Independence said? However, when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. And they use the same phrase, right of the people. So hold on. Yes, I'm creating a government. Yes, that form of government in the form of our Constitution has been ratified. However, I have the reserve clause. I have the exit clause. I have the escape clause of the Second Amendment, which says, yes, we're creating this form of government right here within this document, within the Constitution of the United States of America. But if this form of government, either because of the people that we've chosen to govern, or because of defects within the system of government we have not yet identified, being a completely new experiment, never been tried before in the history of the world, if this form of government were to become destructive of the ends of securing the natural rights of the people, then hell yes, the people shall have the right to alter or abolish it. The right of the people to alter or abolish a tyrannical government, just like the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You don't think those two things go together? You think that's a coincidence? They use that same phrase, right of the people to alter or abolish a tyrannical government, and the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed? Of course they go together. They go together perfectly. It's hand in glove. And that's exactly why they put it in there. Because these people that were establishing a government didn't trust the government. Keep in mind, that's why they're putting the Bill of Rights in together to begin with, because they don't trust the government to limit itself. God, wasn't this prescient? Wasn't this the best prediction in the history of the universe? Which is, we don't trust the government to limit itself to the enumerated powers we've put in the Constitution. The anti-federalists won that debate, and thank God they did. And frankly, I wish they'd been more cynical and more paranoid about the attempts of the federal government to overreach the enumerated powers and to exceed the enumerated powers they laid out in the Constitution. Because God knows we need it, including this absurd reality we have today, which we've created this whole fourth body of government in the form of regulatory agencies that we've given an ungodly amount of power to, that can create rules, that can interpret their own rules. That's legislative and judicial right there together as being part of the executive branch. Holy smokes. What happened to separation of powers? So they were right to be cynical. They were right to be paranoid. And that's exactly why they put the limitations they did in the Bill of Rights. So that's exactly why they put in the ability to stand up to a tyrannical government in the same document that creates the government. That's the context of exactly the discussion we're talking about and why they elected to have, and they won the debate on whether we needed a Bill of Rights at all. And thank God they did. And with that, I'll tell you what, we're a little past the quarter hour. We're taking a break. We'll be right back with the next segment of the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Kendall and Casey.
Federal Communications Commission, certain words that we are not allowed to broadcast.
Well, we warned someone about their behavior recently, and they didn't listen to us.
If this were a podcast, we could play all the potty mouth we wanted to, but since it's a broadcast, we cannot. So if you want to get on the air with us, just make sure you keep your language clean, and that's all I'll say about that.
Kendall and Casey, weekdays 9 till noon on 93 WIBC and WIBC.com.
Hi, this is Denny Smith for Zeorez, and you and I both know that the carpets and floors don't clean themselves. And in fact, they can get so bad that they're way scarier than any Halloween script could imagine. How about a gentle cleaning to soothe your home into a wonderful fall retreat with the patented ZR water? Really, it's a great time to clean the carpets, and it's quick and easy to schedule online. Nobody but Zeorez has the patented electrolyzed ZR water that cleans with no soap, no harsh chemicals, and no residue to attract more dirt. They can even clean your ductwork to help you breathe easier. Duct cleaning improves the air quality in your home as well as the efficiency of your HVAC equipment. Zeorez gets all the yuck out for a fresh fall cleaning with no tricks, just great technicians skilled in thoroughly cleaning up dirt and stains. Schedule online today at ZeroResIndy.com and mention WIBC. You'll get 3 rooms of carpet clean starting at $149, and they'll give you a free hallway and $50 off air duct cleaning too. For a smarter, lasting clean and really easy scheduling, visit ZeroResIndy.com.
It's time to get in the tailgating spirit, Indiana. Take a little trip this football season in a Hubler quality pre-owned vehicle. Every Hubler Q-certified vehicle is covered by a 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. Shop any of Hubler's 12 locations or visit drivehubler.com and choose from over 1,000 vehicles. Chevy, Ford, GMC, Buick, Nissan, Acura, Mazda, Honda, and many more. All makes, all models, certified vehicles, luxury vehicles, even the hard-to-find ones. Plus, every Hubler Q-certified vehicle includes a 128-point vehicle inspection and a free Carfax history report. Get in the tailgating spirit, Indiana, because Hubler's got you covered this football season for 100,000 miles. So what drives Indiana? DriveHubler.com. For over 1,000 vehicles, visit any of our 12 locations. Warranty on select models less than 9 years old.
AE Ammo is Greenwood's ammunition superstore. The largest variety in training, hunting, and self-defense ammo with the best prices locally guaranteed. Factory new 9mm FMJ ammo starting at $12 per 50-round box. Factory new 50-round boxes, $380 from $14.99 and $45 ACP from $18.99. And with the AE Ammo Customer Rewards Program, start earning points today towards money back to use on future purchases. Shop in-store or online at aeammo.com.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper, and you can get it online? Go to hims.com/joy. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, and the process is 100% online. To start your free online visit, go to hims.com/joy. That's HIMS.com/JOY.
Over 2.8 million Americans have served in our military since 9/11. Many have returned home with devastating injuries and few resources for them and their families. This is news correspondent Bob Woodruff. I sustained a life-threatening injury while reporting from Iraq in 2006. The military had my back that day, and they have each other's while serving. It's time we had theirs. Please join us as part of the Got Your Six initiative. To learn more, go to gotyoursix.org using the number 6.
Need a new furnace or air conditioner? Call the professionals from B&W Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Drains.
Just go to B+W.com. B&W is your trusted local independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
No Kid Hungry is providing healthy meals and hope to hungry kids so they can build better futures. Learn more at helpnokidhungry.org.
Now you've got a gun guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
Hey, welcome back to the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. Glad you're with us. So, yeah, any debate about whether the Second Amendment was created and adopted by the founders and ratified by the states, I think we put an end to that debate. At least we should have. I'm sure that debate will rage on because people don't care what the Supreme Court has ruled because, oh, by the way, the Heller decision addressed exactly that point as well. Is there were three primary reasons that the founders wanted the citizens to be armed. And this is right in the opinion. It says, yeah, if there were no standing army, because keep in mind, at the beginning, a lot of folks didn't want a standing army. Why? Because it can be used by the government to impose tyranny. That's why we need a militia. But secondly, they always left open the idea that we could have a standing army, obviously, and soon found the need to have one, particularly with the British coming back in 1812. But realizing that we may very likely have a standing army, we still wanted the militia to be able to stand up next to them, just like they did next to the Continental Army in the War for Independence. That's why every year on the 4th of July, my wife and I watch The Patriot. And you talk about a great depiction of the militia. That's how it worked, and that's how the founders wanted it to work because of exactly that experience. But secondly, they wanted people to be able to have arms in their home for self-defense. And lastly, a trained and equipped and armed populace of the people could stand up to a tyrannical government. And it's right in the Heller decision. And this is after a very deep drill, as I mentioned, on the historical documents going into the formation of this country and the drafting and the intent behind our founding documents, including the Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, and including the Second Amendment. And it's a great scholarly discussion. I mean, a great historical discussion. I think it's really interesting, really fast, and you really ought to read. Just Google D.C. versus Heller, 2008. It'll pop right up. And it's a bit of a long read, but it's definitely worth reading. But then that doesn't put an end, unfortunately. Or I don't know. There can be a lot of entertainment in this, too, particularly when you understand the rulings of the Supreme Court and you understand the subject matter generally. You can have some fun with these people who either want to ignore what the Supreme Court has ruled or want to ignore reality and logic on top of that. Because what's the other long-standing debate you keep hearing? How many times have I seen this posted, or I've had people say to me, the Second Amendment was written at a time when there were just muskets, so great. The Second Amendment protects your right to have a musket. I've seen that thousands of times. Well, again, that's an issue that's been resolved more than once now by the Supreme Court. In Heller, they talked about what arms are contemplated within the arms that people can keep and bear, having the right to do so, that shall not be infringed. Again, we're talking about a right that's protected, but does that mean any and all firearms at any time? A lot of people would say, the founders would say yes. They'd say if the military had it, if the standing army could have it, if foreign governments had it, then hell yeah, we wanted our militia to have it too. I think if our founders come back and give us advice on any issue, I think they would look at it that way. Now, they may look at it this way and say, all right, we need to control the dissemination of nuclear weapons, and perhaps a few others, but I think a lot of the founders would have said, well, hell, our meaning of the militia means they can stand up to the standing army. So the standing army has F-22s and drones and and any number of other sophisticated weapons, and that's exactly what we want the militia to have as well. But obviously, given modern times, courts weren't willing to go that far. So what did the Heller decision say? What did the court say in that decision? It said specifically, it's not limited to those weapons that were in existence at the time of the founding. So the whole great, you can have a musket theory, was thrown out the window. And by the way, just basic logic. Consider this for a moment. I mean, do you have a First Amendment right to get on the internet and post what you want to post? Well, of course you do. Does the Fourth Amendment protect you from the FBI flying a drone through your window to spy on what you're doing? Well, of course it does. Or using satellites or other sophisticated technology to spy on you with no probable cause and no warrant. Well, of course it does. Nobody says a First Amendment's is limited to what you write on parchment with a quill, or you can crank out with a printing press such that it existed in 1791. Nobody even makes that argument. So you can't make that argument within the Second Amendment. But the Supreme Court, again, has resolved the issue. Don't have to resolve it. Don't have to discuss, don't have to debate it. A subsequent decision, Caetano, out of Massachusetts, I believe, a lady had a stun gun. Massachusetts said you can't have a stun gun. She appealed that. What did the Supreme Court, went all the way to the Supreme Court and said specifically, not limited to weapons that were in existence at the time of the founding. Over, done. We're through. Don't have to debate it. We'll keep going, get into some of these other debates when we come back. We're taking a break. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
We feel.
Do you feel like we do? Feel it as soon as you step out the door.
What you feel.
Bundle up. Feels like winter.
It could be more like summertime.
Do you feel like we do?
All the feels.
It feels a little like winter.
Feels more like summer.
Of fall.
It's kind of the clash of two seasons.
Weather. When you need it.
The ebbs and flows this time of the year is so evident.
On your official fall weather station. 93 WIBC.
Fall in Indy, and if you hate painting year after year, do what your neighbor Edwina did. She called Rhino Shield.
Over the years, I've had to touch up the house. I just got to the point where I couldn't spend any more money on the outside of the house. And when I saw Rhino Shield, I thought that was the answer to my problem.
And Rhino Shield's a ceramic coating. Better than paint.
I'd had painters here before, and it was usually quite a disaster with them leaving their equipment here. But Rhino Shield was right on it.
Here's a never-before offer, Indy. Act now before October 31st and get 25% off the 25-year guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield.
The gentleman said, if you're interested, give me a call. And I said, honestly, can you come tomorrow?
Remember, Indy, this is a limited-time offer, so act by Halloween to get 25% off the 25-year guaranteed protection of Rhino Shield. Here's owner Shane Smith.
This offer is limited, so call me at 888-RHINO-41. That's 888-RHINO-41.
Go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
Some days I cover up because of my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Now I'm hitting the road with clearer skin thanks to Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. With Skyrizi, 3 out of 4 people achieved 90% clearer skin at 4 months. And Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZZI to learn more.
This hour on 93 WIBC, powered by B&W Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, your American Standard air dealer.
Fox News, I'm Roger Stern. More hostilities between Israel and Hamas. Fox's Trey Yingst is in southern Israel.
The Israelis continue to strike targets along the Gaza Strip. Gaza, in the distance, there's some smoke rising up across the area as the sun is about to go down.
Egypt allowed 20 trucks carrying food and medicine to cross into Gaza. That's far less than Gazan Palestinians need. Hamas has released 2 American-Israeli hostages, a mother and daughter. It ends 2 weeks of anguish for the girl's grandfather.
I did not sleep at night, and my head always been in Israel.
House Republicans will try again next week to select a speaker. Tuesday marks 3 weeks since the ouster of Kevin McCarthy. America is listening to Fox News.
After our investigation on Indianapolis Animal Care Services aired, our viewers asked us to dive deeper into animal welfare. Fox 59's Angela Ganote went searching for that answer.
Viewers and volunteers are frustrated that a proposed new animal care facility has not been built. Too many cats and dogs are being euthanized.
They don't focus enough on adoptions. They don't focus enough on rescues. And they just put whatever energy that they have into euthanizing dogs.
What we have today, from an animal care services standpoint, is simply shameful.
If Joe Hogsett was a good mayor, we'd have the new animal shelter he announced. Instead, an empty lot. If he cared, he'd have done the job after the cameras left. If Joe Hogsett was up to the job, whistleblowers' calls would have been answered. Instead, euthanasia. Joe Hogsett's had 8 years as mayor. You know about the crime and the roads and the overdoses. But it turns out Joe's failed them, too. It's time for a change.
Paid for by Shreve for Mayor.
Colorectal cancer rates are on the rise, especially in younger adults. The good news? It's one of the few cancers that can be prevented through screening. So we're keeping up, making some changes, and saving lives. Franciscan Health now offers colonoscopy screenings for adults aged 45 and up. No doctor referral needed. And they're covered at 100% by most insurance plans. Are you 45? Screen sooner. Schedule your colonoscopy at franciscanhealth.org/coloncare.
This is Dwight Freeney, and I've teamed up with Indiana Donor Network and Donate Life Indiana to get the word out about how you can save lives in your community. Did you know that more than half of the people waiting for a life-saving organ transplant are people of color? That's why I said yes to being an organ donor, because I want to help end the wait. You can help too. Sign up to be an organ donor next time you're at the BMV and talk to your family about your decision.
He's a Second Amendment attorney. He's an NRA certified firearms instructor. He's the gun guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. I'm sort of debunking some of these ridiculous arguments that we keep seeing. And one of those, and maybe the most common, just where people are arguing for limitations on particular firearms or classes of firearms. People that want to advocate for a so-called assault weapon ban. Again, that's a made-up political term that really is intended to refer to and include most commonly owned rifles in America. That's semi-automatic rifles with detachable magazines is essentially how it gets defined. And they are, in fact, the most commonly owned rifles in America. The AR-15 in particular is the most commonly owned rifle in America. And the numbers are off the charts. I saw numbers just a few years ago that were talking about 15 to 20 million of them in the U.S., and I guarantee it's well beyond that. And every time they talk more about banning them, what happens? People go out and buy more of them. It's nothing like promoting sales than when you start talking about banning something. And we've seen it repeatedly in history. Certainly in the last generation. But an argument that gets made in that context a lot, and I've gone back and forth as to whether I even address this in all seriousness, whether I'm even willing to engage, because it's a silly argument. And people say there ought to be a ban on, what do you want to say, assault weapon. Again, that term is repugnant to me. Or particular rifles like AR-15s and AK-47s. People say that's because you don't need one to defend your home or to go hunting with. You don't need one. Therefore, we ought to be able to ban them. So how do you respond to that? People say, well, you don't need that. Or we ought to be able to ban high-capacity magazines because you don't need more than 1 or 2 shots to defend yourself. And then even among gun owners, what do you hear all the time? If you can't defend yourself from a robbery or a break-in with 2 or 3 shots, you need to go back to the range and learn how to shoot. You clearly are a lousy shot. Let's stick with that one for a minute because I have fun with that one. People look at me. I've been an instructor for 30 years. I've been a competitive shooter. I know quite a few folks around that are better shots than me, but I ain't all bad. Do I consider myself substantially better than average in terms of marksmanship? Yeah, I do. Again, I daily encounter people and have good friends that are better than me. But I'm not all that bad. People look at me, you want a 15-round magazine in your gun? Handgun, gun you carry for self-defense, or 12, whatever the number. If you need that many rounds, you're a lousy shot. Is that even a true statement? Well, let's dissect that a little bit because we're talking about ammo capacity right now. And we'll shift over to the classes of firearms through the rest of the show. But ammo capacity, I'll say, let me give you a really important example. And it's something that, happened right here in Indiana that I had, after the fact anyway, some involvement in, which is the attempted mass shooting at the Greenwood Park Mall. And as you know, if you listen to this show, the hero at the Greenwood Park Mall back July 17th, 2022, was Elijah Dicken. And Eli and his family, as that investigation began right after the shooting, really the same night, hired me to be Eli's lawyer. Not because they really thought he was going to get prosecuted for anything. He's a hero. He saved countless lives and acted unbelievably, heroically, and effectively to stop that mass shooting. Now, 3 innocent people lost their lives, and we don't ever want to lose track of that because that's a big deal. Yes, 3 innocent people lost their lives. But when the shooter was stopped by Eli, yeah, he had an AR-15. He still had over 100 rounds of ammo on him. He had 3 loaded 30-round AR mags and a chest rig when he went down, and had several rounds still in the magazine and the gun. In a busy mall at closing time in Greenwood, a very busy mall at the time, in the food court. How many people could that guy have killed? And the police, again, Chief James Eisen down there in Greenwood, who I got to be friends with, and I have a lot of respect for. I thought he did a great job throughout the investigation. He was in a tough spot, a lot of pressure, and I thought he performed great. And the detectives down there and all the assistant chief that I met, I just thought they did a fabulous job with the whole thing. And I thought they were very, very fair to Eli. Their investigation was very professional. They took their time. They got it right. And I just thought they did a fabulous job. But as I got involved in that, and I was lucky enough to get to see the security tape, and that was just by the graciousness of the Greenwood Police Department. As Eli's lawyer, they let me see it. And you may know some of those details. I've seen some of them kind of misportrayed. People out there on the internet are still doing the Dicken drill. And that's because that entire shooting lasted 15 seconds. That is, from the time the bad guy came out and started firing shots, and killed 3 innocent people. And actually, another little girl caught, I think, a fragment in her legs. I wounded one, you would say. But from the time he started shooting innocent people to the time Eli stopped the fight by shooting him was 15 seconds. Entire duration. Unbelievable. And Eli started shooting the bad guy from 45 yards away, 43. I've lasered it. I was there. He started shooting from a brace position on top of a tall mall trash can that was right next to a column, which gave Eli some cover as well, which was really, really smart. And he was 43 yards away with a Glock 19, a compact handgun. Eli shot 4 times from 43 yards, made 2 hits. 43 yards, not feet, with a handgun, a compact. No red dot, no optic. He actually had somewhat torn up factory sights. He'd been in a little motorcycle mishap where he went down on his bike, slid on his right hip with a gun in a holster, and actually chewed his sights up, both front and back. So he had somewhat chewed up factory sights on a Glock 19, made 2 out of 4 hits from 43 yards. Then he advanced to about 25 yards and freehand, unsupported, shot 4 more times, hit all 4. Then he closed to a shorter distance, about 15, 20 feet, and fired his last 2 shots and ended the threat. So he made 8 out of 10 shots, starting at 43 yards. And it was funny, I had a conversation with Chief Eisen, and he said, yeah, he goes, I show, and I don't let me put words in Chief Eisen's mouth, but I'm paraphrasing. But essentially he said, yeah, I had my SWAT team watch a security video, and I asked all the members of my SWAT team, could you guys have made all those shots? And there was some whistling and, looking at the ceiling. And I think they were being humble, and I'm sure some of those guys, or maybe all, could make most, if not all, those shots. But what I'm saying is that was one bad guy, and it took Eli 10 shots, and with remarkable, incredible marksmanship. Part of that is because handguns are notoriously bad fight stoppers. And we have an awful lot of examples of people out there, bad guys getting shot a lot of times, or even good guys getting shot a lot of times, who are still able to return fire and deliver deadly force. So they're not good fight stoppers to begin with. In a high-stress environment, your marksmanship's going to suffer. Now, Eli's didn't. But now let's say you're not as incredibly talented and skilled or blessed as Eli was in that particular situation, and you're not as good a shot. Now there's more than one bad guy. Now there's 3 guys with ARs. And you got to fight or die. And somebody's going to look at you and say, well, if you need more than 2 or 3 rounds, guy, to stop that threat, then you're not a very good shot. Bull. That's ludicrous. That's silly. Now, there are some statistics that support the idea that the most common self-defense shootings do not take a lot of rounds. I'll go into that here after we take this break. But we'll address this bottom line on this need argument. You don't need that many rounds, or you don't need that type of firearm. And we'll do that here in this next segment to wrap up this edition of The Gun Guy Show. Right now, we're taking a break. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
You let him try violin because you love him. And if you love him that much, love him enough to make sure he's buckled up and in the back seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Electric vehicles are here to stay. And if you're looking for an electric vehicle, Andy Moore Ford is your EV headquarters. More selection. Get to Andy Moore Ford to shop the Mach-E, the E-Transit, the F-150 Lightning in stock, and more arriving daily. Save more at the pump when you switch to an Andy Moore Ford EV. Say hello to more rebates with federal and state incentives. You could save more. How's over $7,500 sound to you? But the benefits don't end there. Purchasing an EV with Andy Moore means you can take advantage of excellent services like more to your door, more peace of mind with over a decade of experience in selling and servicing electric vehicles. Andy Moore Ford's EV experts are here to answer all of your questions, from sales to service, parts to maintenance. Check out Andy Moore Ford. Find them in Plainfield at 2713 East Main Street, 2713 East Main Street. Andy Moore Ford. Andy Moore, M-O-H-R. AndyMooreFord.com. That's AndyMooreFord.com.
Think you know what high energy feels like? Wait until you experience the 2023-24 Indiana Pacers.
For a driving right side, right baseline, two-hand slam.
Indiana Pacers basketball is back, and we are ramped up.
Here's a step back three. Young fella, way to knock it down.
It's opening night presented by Kroger on Wednesday, October 25th at 7, when the Pacers battle the Washington Wizards. Get your tickets at pacers.com/tickets.
CareSource Marketplace health plans are reliable and predictable. That's important because your life plans...
Oh, no!
are not. CareSource gives you the affordable coverage and premium network to take on whatever comes your way. Emergency services, hospital care, prescriptions, and more. Our plans are simple and affordable because when your life is complicated, it's important that your health insurance is not. For affordable coverage when you need it most, visit caresource.com/marketplace. We got you.
JMV from SM's Home and Garden and Sundown Gardens. The discounts for the big fall sale jumped to 30 to 40% off nursery stock plus 20% off all fall annuals, pumpkins, and mums. Hurry in while supplies last in the greenhouse. Container trees and shrubs can still be planted this time of year, and you save big money buying now. Miss M's Home and Garden on State Road 135 south of Whiteland Road. MissM'sHomeandGarden.com. Sundown Gardens 186th and Spring Mill Road in Westfield. SundownGardens.com.
You expect your home to protect everything you love, but you don't expect the ways water is breaking down your basement and damaging your home. Mold, cracks, and of course visible water are just a few signs your basement is compromised. But there's one way to get answers to all your concerns. A free home inspection from Indiana Foundation Service. We put water back in its place. Get your free inspection at indianafoundation.com.
Second to none on the Second Amendment. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back for the final segment of the Gun Guy Show here on 93 WIBC. We're wrapping up by talking about this discussion of need. And you know, when I engage in that debate, or at least I did it historically, I always started off by being a bit of a smartass and saying, well, you know, interestingly enough, the Second Amendment's contained in something we call the Bill of Rights. And you might want to take notice of the fact it's not called the Bill of Needs. And if I have a right to do something, and the Supreme Court in the Heller decision said, yeah, I have a protected right to keep and bear those arms, and this is how they define the scope of the Second Amendment, that are commonly used for lawful purposes by U.S. citizens. And so if it meets that test, and I've decided I need it, as the sole person who gets to make that decision, the fact that you don't think I need a particular firearm, or for that matter, that I don't need a particular number of rounds, means exactly this. You can pound sand. It doesn't make any difference to me. You don't need that. Or people want me to justify, why do you need an AR-15? And anytime the government is successful, this is a really, really important point. Anytime the government is successful in convincing you, or the populace in general, that they only have a right if they need to exercise that right, you've lost that right. Because who gets to decide whether you have a sufficient need? Government does. And that's exactly why, for instance, in the more recent Supreme Court decision, the Bruin, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, they addressed New York's licensing scheme. New York said you can only have a handgun license if you have a particular need for self-defense in public, because they weren't issuing handgun licenses to carry a handgun in public unless you could show some existential threat. That, oh yeah, right now I am under this threat to my safety. Not just I live in a bad neighborhood, or I want to have the general ability to defend myself and my family. Oh no, I basically say a bad guy's after me now. It was about that bad. And the government got to sit back and say, I think you have a sufficient need to carry a handgun, but the whole rest of you don't. And the Supreme Court said very emphatically, when the government can decide whether you get to exercise a constitutionally protected freedom based on need, they have changed a right into a privilege granted by the government, as opposed to an unalienable right granted to you by God. And how important a distinction is that? So if we allow ourselves to get baited into this discussion of only having a right because we need to exercise that right, we're giving up high ground in the debate. We're accepting a premise that's going to lead to the loss of the argument at the end of the day, and certainly the loss of the right. And there's a great quote, and you see this come out every now and then. But there was a guy all the way back from actually England, William Pitt, who dealt with this idea that freedoms are based on need. And I love this quote, and I've used this so often over the years. His quote is butchered that. His quote is, "Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom." Let me start that over. Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. So just stop there a minute. What is he saying? He's just saying that. If you don't need something, and oh, by the way, implicit in that is if the government gets to decide whether you have a sufficient need to exercise a right, exactly as the Bruin decision says, it's no longer a right. So I don't have to discuss whether or not I have a need for a particular form of firearm. Now, do I have a suppressed AR-15 SBR, short-barreled rifle, next to my bed? Yeah. It has suitable ammo in it for home defense. It's suppressed, which is nice in an indoor environment. It's got a short barrel so I can navigate hallways, doorways, stairs, and otherwise if I need to and if I determine that's prudent under the circumstances. And it's the appropriate firearm, weapon I've chosen to defend my home. And whether anybody agrees with me or not that I need that particular firearm, whatever anyone's opinion is on that topic, I could literally not care less. It is impossible for me to care less. It means nothing to me. Because I don't have to win that argument. I don't even have to engage in that argument. You don't need that. You don't need that to hunt ducks. Your mouth is moving. It's like the old Charlie Brown commercials, like wah, wah, wah. So what? And you apply the Heller test, commonly used for lawful purposes. It's the most commonly used rifle in America. It's a commonly owned rifle in America. I don't have to convince anybody what my need is. And I actually had that debate here on WIBC. Brian Baker, and I don't know if Brian is around. I know he lives in Atlanta, but I think he still fills in over the phone a few times remotely for other hosts and whatnot. Brian's a good guy. I like Brian. But we were co-hosting, I think, on Hammer and Nigel, or one of us, maybe I was a guest and he was co-hosting, or the other way around. I don't remember. But he went into this, you don't need this. And I look at him and I said, Brian, I'll convince you what I need. If I have a right to do something, I could care less whether you think I have a right to it. And explained why. And actually, believe it or not, this very rarely happens in this context. Brian came around and publicly agreed with me and said he had that one wrong. But what we've done, and I hope you've enjoyed it, we've gone through some of these tired, obsolete arguments as to what we do or don't have in terms of those rights protected, not conferred, protected by the Second Amendment. And we as Second Amendment advocates, we're people that respect our constitutional rights and those of others, need to have a better understanding of how to address these things, because there are easy arguments out there. And we can tell people exactly how and why they can pounce in when they try to argue for the limitation of our constitutional freedom. And with that, we'll call it quits here on this edition of The Gun Guy Show. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you come back next week. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
93 WIBC.
Delphi murder suspect Richard Allen needs a new legal team.
Previous legal team was accused of leaking evidence.
Allen will need a public defender.
Hear the news.
President Biden addressing us from the White House,
describing Hamas as pure, unadulterated evil.
Another update is just minutes away.
Temperatures will bounce between the 40s and the 70s.
The warmer air trying to win out, but the colder air will eventually win in the end. A warm period later next week.
93 WIBC and WIBC.com.
We've created something special here in Carmel. I'm Sue Finkham, and it's here where I built my business and started a family and served as a leader on City Council, helping our community prosper and increasing government transparency. Now, we're America's #1 rated city, but we're just getting started. Lots of people talk about keeping Carmel the best city in America, But me, I'm the only one with the plan and experience to do it. I'm Sue Finkum. It's simple. Prioritize public safety by hiring, training, and equipping our first responders. Introduce responsible budgeting so every cent spent benefits us. And ensure development doesn't endanger our community's one-of-a-kind character.
Sue Finkum,